Hey guys, welcome to the I Love This Shit podcast. Today is my very first interview in life on the podcast with the one and only Kealan Patrick Burke. Guys, we spent 2 hours, I kid you not, 2 hours talking about so many different things. It was so much fun. I can't thank him enough. This was definitely went so much better than I was expecting, especially being this is my first time ever interviewing or talking to anybody of this sort like this. It was great. I really hope you guys enjoy it. This is just a quick little intro to let you guys know what you're in for. Really hope you guys like it. Leave me all the comments. Let me know if you like it. I love this pod on Instagram. I love this pod at gmail.com. I love this pod.com. You guys know where to go, do everything. So go do it. Here's the interview. I'm going to jump right into it. Guys, have a good day. Enjoy the interview. Yeah, so I guess we can get this thing going. I wrote down some questions, but I'm going to try to use them as just more of guidelines,
Yes.
And apologies in advance if I stop and recollect myself and just
No, it's no problem at all. I might have to do the same myself.
All right, good. All right, so let's start off with the usual interview question, which is, where were you born? Tell me about all that.
I don't know. That's my answer. Next.
Well, all right, moving on.
I don't know. They find it hard to track the moving patterns of wolves these days. So I'm not really sure where my parents are or who they were. But no, the obvious answer I guess is Ireland. But it's a small coastal town down south called Dungarvan. I've written about it a couple of times. It's kind of hard not to, but simpler times. I was born to Catholic parents and raised in a Catholic country, and I wish that said that that was an indicator that I was able to watch my P's and Q's, but no, it's the exact opposite. I've been a nightmare of a person ever since then, so it's entirely their fault.
Oh man, are you an only child?
No, I have a younger brother. He's 6 years younger than me.
Oh, same. Well, I have an older brother. He's 6 years older.
Yeah, he's the kid they like.
That's usually what I say.
Yeah, exactly. He's the good one. There's only enough room for one good and one evil in one family. So,
how was home life with you and the younger brother?
it was good. I mean, the thing I kind of regret is that there was enough distance in age between us that by the time I was 16 and a troublemaker, I moved out of home. I was like, screw this. I'm going to go join a rock band or the circus or something.
Oh man.
And I just left. And, at the time, well, of course, as everyone knows, when you're 16, the only thing you really care about is yourself.
Yeah.
So I went, living the life of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And it was only when I got older that I started to realize that I left my brother there. Now, he wasn't in any danger or anything. He'd fine life, but I missed all those years of being able to connect with him.
Yeah.
As an older kid, and we talk about that a lot. We're great. We're very close now, and we talk about it. He's still in Ireland, but we talk a lot about those years and how it was a different experience for both of us. And we're kind of making up for lost time, but still, I do get pangs of guilt over being so selfish and running out in pursuit of my own dreams and everything, which I suppose is natural. It just doesn't often happen when you're 16, I guess.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and like you said, you were 16, and that's what 16-year-olds do. They rebel.
Yeah, they're assholes.
That's definitely an appropriate way to put it.
Well, I was. I don't want to speak for them all, and I think these days that the youth has a very different perspective on things. And I guess if I'd have been able to look up the internet and see all the ways in which things can go wrong or can go right, and all the opportunities, it would change the way I grew up and would change direction. But I don't know. I'm as guilty as I am proud of the fact too that I grew up in that time where I could basically the only way to learn shit was to throw yourself headfirst into it rather than being able to research everything.
I feel like you learn a little more because with the internet, you look up specific things, whereas, if you have to go out and explore, you're finding things you weren't thinking of before.
Yeah, exactly. And I do like that. I mean, back then, I think it was probably the last generation to be educated by just life and not necessarily its kind of digital instruction manual.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Was anyone in your family readers or writers?
Oh, yeah. My mom was a huge horror fan. She still is, but when I grew up, there was always books around the house. She had me reading as soon as I knew how to use my eyes. But she used to send me to the library and gave me her ticket, ostensibly to get books for her from the adult section: thrillers, Stephen King, James Herbert,
Oh, man.
all that kind of stuff. But I was to get those books for her and use my junior card or whatever the hell it was called to get young adult stuff for myself, which I would, but it was all a ruse, because by the time I got home, or when I got home, we would sit there and then decide which of the Stephen King books I could read, which she was going to read, and then we'd trade them off when we were done.
I wish my mom and I would have done that, because her favorite author is Stephen King. I think she told me she was a teenager when The Stand came out, and she read that. I think she said over the weekend, which to me is just insane.
Yeah. Oh man, that's crazy.
Yeah, it took me almost all of January to read that.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I mean, I don't recall her ever reading those, but she would read them and then decide whether or not it was appropriate. Which is funny to me now, because when I think back of it, the only one I remember her telling me I couldn't read was Pet Sematary.
Mm.
So she stuck it in her drawer, and I waited until she was gone to work, and I snuck it out of her drawer. And I was, it's like one of those Hollywood scenes. I was under the covers with the flashlight, just reading it at night and terrifying myself with the shadows on the walls. But it's funny because I think I only get that now too. It so much makes sense in retrospect, but I think it was more the themes she was worried about, not any, cursing or nudity or violence. It was the themes, how dark they were in that particular book, that I think that's what she was worried about.
Definitely. That's very grim subject matter, to say the least.
Yeah, and it's, I can't really say objectively, of course, whether it had any lasting impact, but I remember loving that book and loving being scared by it.
Is it safe to assume that's your favorite Stephen King book?
No, I wouldn't. I have a soft spot for it. It's a great book. I have a soft spot for it because I think, and it's hard to really pinpoint it, but I think that of the elements that made me decide to have this career and in this genre in particular, that played a large role, primarily because it's the earliest I can recall being so thrilled, being scared, not terrified, like, oh my God, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
But being so intoxicated by the experience of fear that I knew I wanted to do that for other people. I knew I wanted to write stories that would give somebody else that giggly little nervous thrill and go, oh, this is fun.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So I do love that one. I don't know how to really pinpoint a favorite Stephen King book, because there's so many of them I really enjoy. The usual fare, you'd say It or The Shining or Salem's Lot.
Oh yeah.
But so I don't know if I have a favorite. I think by virtue of the amount of books he's written that I enjoy, he would have to be one of my favorite authors. But I find it impossible to pick one that I think is my favorite, because there's probably 10 of them that are.
Yeah, definitely. It's like anytime someone says, "Oh, rank the Dark Tower novels," it's like you ask me 2 hours later, it's going to be a totally different order.
Yeah. Do you know I haven't finished reading those? I only started trying to read them because when I was growing up and those were coming out, I always thought, sword and sorcery. I just assumed, and I'm like, I'm not into any of this. But I only started reading them a few years ago, and I'm up to Wizards and Glass now.
Oh man, I know a lot of people were turned off by that one because of the whole backstory thing, but
yeah.
And as much as I would, love the first three, I did want to progress, but I also wanted to know, all the backstory and stuff. And the first time around, I was like, okay, it was good, but I definitely want to keep moving forward. But then I reread the first four again, and I was just like, holy shit, this is definitely up there in like the top three.
Now, without ruining anything, because I do intend to read them, an awful lot of people that I've spoken to about it, including a good friend of mine, who loves King, and he loves a certain number of the Dark Tower books, but he and many other people I've spoken to have said that it tends to get worse after Wizards and Glass. Is that, would you agree with that?
I wouldn't necessarily say worse. It's he did start 5, 6, and 7 after his whole, getting hit by the van accident and all that. So I noticed a tonal shift. And the only one I can say I didn't really care for would be the sixth book, because to me that's kind of a in between. The it's just kind of it was basically not a filler book, but a setup novel. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe it's just because the first four were so fantastical, and the last three kind of they do have that fantastical element, but just like I said, the tonal shift I think was a little jarring for people probably.
What did you think of the movie?
Oh God, I don't think of it.
Yeah, you know what? I was one of those people that, because I hadn't read the entire series, I wasn't quite as invested in it. And I thought, too, that I'm not going to get, and I try to avoid at all possible, getting on this absolute insane fanboy thing where they just absolutely hate something to a psychotic degree.
Yeah.
So I separated myself from that, and I said, you know what? I'm going to sit down and just watch this without having finished the series of books, and just see what I think of it just as a movie. Forget that there's any connection to anything literary. Oh, Jesus, it was awful.
Yeah, see, that's what I was telling people. I was like, okay, not looking at it as a fan of the novels and all that. I'll just look at it as a movie, and I'm like, even so, this is like a very bad B movie.
That's it, yeah. I mean, forget the connections to anything. Just as a movie taken on its own merits, it's just not good. You've got a load of talented people who really seem bored.
Yeah.
And the script makes no sense. It's all rushed. It's you don't have time to care about anyone. You don't have time to care about the predicaments they're in. And I think it was a shame, because I think that that the casting was pretty stellar, and I was really, really excited when I heard.
Yeah, definitely.
Who they had cast, yeah, but
yeah, I remember, well, spoiler alert for those who haven't seen it. The ending to me was like such a Back to the Future type ending. It was a oh hey, do you want to come with me? Yeah, sure, let's go. Walk into a building and a bright light flashes, and then up comes this triumphant music, and it's like, what the hell was that?
All you needed was a Doc to be looking out the window. Great Scott.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man. I meant to ask this. I meant to ask this a little while back, but when did you move to America?
2001. It was about 2 weeks before 9/11.
Oh man, what a welcome wagon that was.
Yeah. And it's it kind of guaranteed that I'd never forget the circumstances surrounding my decision to move. I just thought that Ireland was not in a great place economically, and I was just bouncing from. I graduated in journalism, and I thought I had a head full of dreams, and I thought, yeah, I'm even going to be wearing the fedora with press sticking out of it, going up and taking flashbulb pictures of people going, there's the scoop.
Yeah.
But it didn't work out that way. There was no jobs, and I ended up writing stories on the back of napkins while tending bar for chronic amounts of hours. And when I wasn't tending bar, I was drinking on the other side of it in my pursuit to become Bukowski, only a shittier version. Yeah. So yeah, that's saying something. So so yeah, I had the opportunity to come here and just try out life here for a while, and I did. And then within 2 weeks, I'm being woken up to watch planes hitting skyscrapers, and I thought, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
I mean, it was interesting. Like, obviously, probably the worst thing I've ever seen happen in my entire life, and it made the world seem really small, which was strange, because for the 2 weeks leading up to that, I found it difficult coming from a country that's an island where you can drive from the south to the north in about 8 hours.
Yeah.
The immensity of this country, like the scope of it, just was kind of hard for me to take in and kind of hard to reconcile. And all of a sudden, this tragedy happens, and I'm looking at it, and I started to feel like the world had basically shrunk to a very small and dangerous place.
Oh,
But
yeah, definitely.
it was crazy. I mean, my initial impression was that I was watching a movie, and I couldn't understand why I was being woken up with such urgency to watch a Michael Bay movie or something.
Yeah.
You know?
I remember I was in middle school, and I woke up and I usually put on. It's funny, I was in middle school, but I still watched Magic School Bus just because that's what was on in the morning. And so I woke up, I always just had it on in the background as I'm getting ready, and I turned it on, and not paying attention, I just saw that the news was on. I was like, oh man, I want to watch the news. Change the channel. Same thing. And I was like, damn, apparently the news is on everything right now. And I went to a different channel. Same thing. And it was all the same shot. And I was like, maybe I should, see what's going on. And as I sat down to watch what was going on, was when the second one hit and just, blew my mind. Like wow, this is something out of a movie when someone turns on the TV and it's the same thing on every channel because something extremely terrible is happening.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that I think nowadays we've had to grow accustomed to seeing things happening on TV that we just, or to hear about them, that we always kind of arrogantly assumed happened everywhere else,
Yeah.
And I mean, I remember when I was growing up, we had drills in school. We were told, bomb drills, because the IRA were threatening, because of statements made by the government in the Republic, that they were going to come down and start blowing the shit out of us as well. So, man. And it was just, it became second nature. You just thought, oh, come in here, yeah, do your drills. This is what happens in the case that terrorists walk in the door. And I go, okay. So we kind of, it just became part of what it was to be Irish, was that, the North is going to blow itself to fucking pieces, and you're just, don't get too complacent down south, because just because you're not involved doesn't mean that you will be.
Yeah.
But, it was crazy. And then when I came here, I don't know if I had this assumption that, well, nothing ever happens in America. It's the land of the free and the brave and all this shit. And then I go around, and then within 2 weeks saw that, and I thought, yeah, nothing is safe.
I was going to say, yeah, nowhere you go is safe.
No, it's not. And I mean, I don't know if it's a matter of perspective or what, but it does seem in the past couple of years like it's just escalating to some type of fucking boiling point. I don't know.
Oh god, yeah. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
I remember. Oh man, how old or how long ago was it? I think it was in like 1997. My grandma flew my brother and I out to Ireland to visit my aunt, because she likes to move around a lot. She lived in New Mexico for a little while, and then she moved out to, I believe it was Dublin.
Wow.
I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was Dublin. So we went out and visited her for a good couple weeks, and I just thought it was funny that, even at however old I was, 9-10 years old, I always heard about how, rainy and green it is there and all that. And then step off the plane, and as soon as I step off, just water bottle sized droplets of rain hitting me as soon as I get off that airplane.
The Irish welcome.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we saw the sun 2 days while we were there for those almost 2 weeks.
When did you go?
We went in, I believe it was in July of 1997.
Yeah. I don't know if it's climate change or what, but the last couple of times I've gone home have been between, usually around May, I think, and between May and July. But every time I've gone home, I'd say if I go for 2 weeks, I get probably 11 days of absolute glorious sunshine, then it rains the rest of it.
Oh, man.
Yeah, you might have an absolute beautiful day, might be 70 degrees, and then you'll get just an hour of rain just to cool things off.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, don't get comfortable.
Anytime I bring up the story of going to Ireland, too, I always have to mention that I think it was the first day we were there, we went to a mall, and it's a really cool little mall, too. Like, I can't tell you what it was called or anything, but I remember finding a comic book shop, and I was a really big Spawn fan at that time, and I found a really cool Spawn graphic novel, and that's all I did that whole time I was there at my aunt's house, was just read that graphic novel over and over again. And the day we go to leave, I can't find it. She had a tiny little house. We tore that house upside down, could not find it, and still to this day, it pisses me off that I never found it, nor do I remember enough about it to try to seek it out again.
Leprechaun probably stole it.
Yeah, I was like, damn, they do really have leprechauns here, don't they?
They do. I mean, well, no, they don't, obviously. But, it's amazing how many people I've met over here who said, so, I get asked some absolutely insane questions. Not by readers, but when I go out, or if I'm at a restaurant, or if I meet up with people from out of town, it's this kind of looking at you like, because you're Irish, you're somehow really different,
Yeah.
When we're all fundamentally the same. But they'll ask me questions like, do you guys still use horse and carts to get around over there? I'm like, no, we don't. You guys have jukeboxes? Like, we do, yeah. And another one was, so what's the deal with leprechauns?
Oh, God.
What's the deal? What do you mean? So, like, are they real or... And I said, well, we used to have them, but, we rounded them all up and put them in cages, and now you just have to pay exorbitant amounts to get to see them. Oh, really? Oh, that's crazy, man. They should be left to run around the place freely. And I'm like, yeah, I agree.
We gathered them all up, and, now they make cereal for us.
They do, yeah. And the thing is, like, they have to be kept in captivity, otherwise they're cannibals. And, it's just not worth it. It's not worth it just to see them in their natural feeding grounds.
Yeah, I remember in elementary school on good old St. Patrick's Day, we'd walk into the classroom and they would have like the chairs dumped over, and there would be like little handprints on the chalkboard, and they'd put little chalk like outlines of feet on the ground, and I'm just like, okay, I'm a kid and I get this is for us, but what the hell?
But it's crazy. See, and that's another thing. People say in this current climate where everything is a cause for outrage, every single thing is a cause for somebody to be upset about it.
Oh, God,
I get asked a lot, about, so do you celebrate St. Patrick's Day over here? Because I'm sure it's very offensive. And honestly, I don't care. I've had so many different experiences over here on St. Patrick's Day where, people uninformed about what Ireland is and what the Irish are. I mean, I get questions like, is Ireland in France? I was legitimately asked that once. And it doesn't faze me, it doesn't bother me, and I don't form judgments on the people who ask those questions, because America is huge, and as we can see, there has been a very a tendency for isolationism, and people just don't really either care or know very much about what happens outside the borders of it, and that's understandable, I guess. I didn't know a lot about the world until I traveled it, but it doesn't.
Yeah, definitely.
It doesn't bother me. I mean, it's like, I don't care at all, basically, about it, and people talking about leprechauns and everything. Oh, that must make you so mad. I don't give a shit. I really don't. There are greater concerns than to be tying myself in knots over the stupidest of things.
Yeah, exactly. Just kind of brush it off. Like, oh, like you said, just make a nice little comment about it and just keep moving.
Yeah, and I like that guy who asked me about the jukebox. He said, do you guys have jukeboxes in Ireland? And I said, no, are you kidding me? I said, we hear Dolby Surround, we think we're being invaded again.
Oh, man. I just don't get where some people come up even with those questions. Like, I don't know, it's almost like the flat earther thing. It's like, are you really that dumb? Do you really believe that?
Well, yeah, and a lot of it comes from, from their exposure to, like, I think a lot of it on Patrick's Day is when people say things that they get based on the only Irish things they've been exposed to, and that tends to be in movies or on TV. Thank You, Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, Far and Away, and Darby O'Gill and the Little People, and they just assume that we basically spend our days doing dances around a pot of gold with a bunch of drunken leprechauns, and which to me
Eating a bunch of baked
is
potatoes.
yeah, exactly, yeah, which to me is absolutely hilarious. And you can't really rail against people who say, "Ah, you a bunch of potato eaters," because we are potato eaters.
Yeah,
I fucking love potatoes.
I'm with you on that one.
Yeah, and you're all a bunch of drunks over there. With the irony being, it's being said by a drunk guy, but he's not entirely wrong there either. I
Yeah.
mean, we are a bunch of hardcore drinking, fighting, foul-mouthed bunch of fuckers.
That was I really loved when I was there because you know nobody gave a shit that I was a kid. They were just letting f words fly left and right, and I don't know. I
Oh,
just thought it was really cool. I was like, all right, I dig this. This is pretty cool. Definitely some free spirits here to say the least.
yeah, and I mean the thing is too, like that if you really want to discuss like what Ireland is, it is in many ways the same as any place else. I mean, we have a great culture over there. There's some of the finest colleges in the world, like you've Trinity College, University College. It's an amazing place. We've got ancient architecture. It's beautiful. I'd advise everybody to go see it at least once. But no culture can be defined by its stereotypes, nor should it be.
Yeah, definitely.
Will you find drunken, fighting, foul-mouthed Irishmen? Yes, you will. Will you find, people who believe in superstition and fairies and leprechauns in Ireland in the rural areas? Yes, you will. So, I mean, none of them are particularly wrong, but it's a mistake, I think, to reduce it to that, because it's so much more to offer than just a country that bred superstition and little else.
Oh, definitely. I definitely want to go back there because I feel like I didn't get to appreciate it as much as I could have, considering I was only 9 or 10 years old at the time.
Still amazing that you went, though, at that age. I mean, I don't think there's much better than to give a child a gift that you give a child than to travel, and especially to outside your own country's borders to get to show them the world.
Yeah, it's funny because people have asked me like, oh, how far have you traveled? I'm like, well, in the United States, I've only ever been to, well, obviously California because it's where I'm from, and I've been to Oregon, Washington, and the furthest away I've been is New Mexico. But I have been to Ireland and London, and everyone's just like, you've been to Ireland and London, but you haven't been any further east of the country than New Mexico. It's like, yep, that's how it goes.
Oh, it's crazy. I think I've been here, what now? Let me see. I suck at math, but what is it now? 2018? So
It
I've been
is.
17 years,
Yeah.
and in that time, I could count on two hands probably the amount of people that I have met who have never been outside the borders of this state.
Oh man.
And that kind of tells me really, it helps explain why people have such a narrow view or a limited view of other places, is because they haven't seen them. I mean, if you haven't gone beyond the borders of Ohio and even gone to Florida in the winter, or you haven't gone to Michigan or Pennsylvania, I can't really expect you to know much about the governing body in Norway or the troubles in Ireland. Like, I think it's an unfair expectation, really.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, you live in a pretty small state, don't you?
Yeah, Ohio.
Yeah. See, I mean, you can easily reach any of your bordering states pretty quickly, couldn't you?
Yeah, exactly. By accident. If I'd been walking home drunk some night, I could have ended up in Michigan.
Oh man, I'm pretty sure you'd be able to tell the difference too.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Yeah, and it's one of the things that for all that these states have to offer, it is very similar geographically. So one of the best things I did was take a road trip out west. No plan, nothing. Just got in the car and went. And I think it took 2.5 weeks. Went all the way out to California, all the way back down up through Texas, or across through Texas and Oklahoma, and back into Ohio. And it was stopping whenever I felt like it, doing whatever I felt, staying in these shitty motels. It was fantastic.
Yeah. See, that's what, and see, a lot of people always talk about that. I remember my friends talking about that in high school. They were like, "Oh, after we graduate, let's all pitch in on a Winnebago and go over America." And it's like, okay, yeah, that sounds like fun, but it's not going to happen.
Logistically speaking, it's a bit of a nightmare. And I was in debt up to my eyeballs after doing it, but I would do it again.
Oh yeah, I mean, as much as you look at it as like me, I hate traveling so much as just the routine of traveling, of the packing shit up and going through like even like with flying, going through the airports, like, if I could just walk outside down the street and be at my destination, I'd be happy. Like, I want to see places, but the routine of it is just a pain in the ass.
Exactly. That's what I say. A lot of people ask me if I'm afraid of flying. I say I have no problem with flying. I'm afraid of airports.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I don't know what it is. I get so apprehensive. And I mean, Jesus, if I was apprehensive before, I don't know what I'm going to be like now. Because, we're getting, the Irish government is warning Irish legal residents of America to make sure they have all their paperwork now. Because if you go through customs or you're going through security at American airports, you will probably be selected for questioning.
Oh, man.
And you know what? I just hate the whole process of it. I hate the invasiveness of it. I hate the fact that the minute you stand in line, you're looked at like you are potentially a criminal.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm a pasty white guy who shaves his head. I just look like a neo-Nazi from the get,
Are you a legal? Not legal.
Yeah.
I mean, a citizen, I should say, of U.S.
Oh, a permanent resident. I have my green card and all that junk. But I used to think that was enough, and I mean that's all that's required, really. But nowadays it's hard to say. I could be shipped off tomorrow, which would actually not be a bad thing because I've been thinking of moving back there anyway.
All
so
right.
if somebody else wants to just stick me on a plane for free in the cargo hold with all the chickens, I'm more than willing to go.
You're like, hey, you just paid my airfare. I'm good now.
Yeah, cool. That's been the thing that keeps me from going back home a lot anyways, the expense of it. So if you want to bite that tab from me and just fire me into the hold, I'm off.
I remember I used to watch The Late Show with Craig Ferguson.
Yeah.
And he was talking about one episode, like when he moved here, he thought, like, oh, hey, I've got my green card and all that, like, I should be good. And then he realized he was gonna live here, and he more or less had to get his citizenship. And I thought it was cool that he recorded him getting his citizenship, which was I'd never seen how that goes about. And he said basically you just take a test and then you have everybody stand in a room and say the Pledge of Allegiance, and then you're a citizen.
Yeah, you know what, that was interesting for me when I came here first. And I got married here as well, so that's that kind of, to an American, so that expedited everything. And
oh yeah.
But it was funny because we spent 2 weeks rehearsing everything we knew about each other, and just to make sure we didn't flub any questions during the interview. And I was just, no amount of deodorant could keep the sweat from under my nose.
Oh man.
I was in a suit, I had shaved, I was looking my absolute best, apart from being stark white with terror. And we went in, and they asked none of the questions. I mean, 10 minutes before that, we're in the car going downtown, and she's asking me pop questions about what kind of shampoo she uses. And we get in there, and he sits down, looks at me, and just went, all right, signed the thing, and held up his hand to give him the Pledge of Allegiance. And my wife looks at me, and she's there, wow, we did it, we made it. And I look back at the guy who's holding up his palm for the Pledge of Allegiance, and I high-fived him. I thought that's what he was doing. And I was like, oh, yay! And he rolled his eyes and turned to my wife with his hand held up, and out of sheer nerves, she did the same thing.
Oh, man.
She high-fived him, and he just looked like there are no stupider people on the face of the planet right now. These two goons in my office.
And guaranteed that guy was probably just thinking like, God damn foreigners.
Yeah, oh, probably. And then he said, okay, well, whatever. Let's do the Pledge of Allegiance now. And we got out of there. Everything was great. So, cut to a decade later, and we had an amicable divorce. It was, we're still friends. Everything was great. But I was then wondering, okay, well, we're not married anymore. Do I need to check in with the immigration people and make sure that I'm still legal, that everything's cool? And I got all nervous all over again. So I got my paperwork, got everything together, got my green card, went into the office, and it was the same guy.
Oh, wow.
Exact same guy. And he looked up. I mean, this time he was behind, instead of sitting in an office, he was behind a pane of protective glass with a slot in the bottom of it. And I walked up and I was shaking. I thought, this is it. They're just going to send me home. And he took my papers, and without even looking at him, he looked right at me. And he said, it's the high five guy. And he just stamped the thing, signed it, held it back to me, and said, "You're good.
Oh, wow.
You'll get some mail in a few weeks." And I was thrilled, of course. I was delighted. I came home. I was like, "Yay!" But all I could think of then in the coming days was, can you imagine if I wasn't white?
Mm.
You know,
Yeah,
and I
definitely.
go in, and it's the exact same scenario. We met him in the beginning. Everything was cool. He remembered me, and I don't know. I was just, I guess, and it's what they accurately refer to as white privilege. I think it was all, there was the guy.
Yeah, exactly.
When for all he knew, I could be a terrorist.
That's true.
It's just, I don't know. It bugs me now. Everything does, so I just shut the hell up about it, though.
Yeah, that it's just funny because that whole story almost sounds like I guess basically like a romantic comedy or a sitcom episode. The whole, you trying to get legalized, and then you guys meet, rehearsing everything about each other, and then finally at the end, just high five the guy.
Exactly. It sounds like something out of a romantic comedy, unless you change the color of my skin, and then it becomes a horror story.
It becomes like the movie Get Out.
Yeah, exactly. And that kind of stuck with me. The two things that stuck with me were the initial absolute relief of it. Oh, thank Christ, I'm not going to be deported.
Yeah,
And then
definitely.
very soon after that, I started thinking about, well, why is it that easy for me? He didn't even ask me any questions. He doesn't know. He didn't check anything. For all he knows, I could have been arrested 9 times since he last saw me. I could be a domestic terrorist. I could be a fucking incel. I could be any of these things, but doesn't matter. You're the guy who high-fived me. Welcome to the club.
Oh man, I. I mean, I want to say like that's America for you. Just be like, oh yeah, I remember that guy. He did the high five. He's good with me.
Yeah, and I mean, you know what? It's for me benefiting from it. Obviously, it's a good thing. I wouldn't want it to be different for me particularly, but at the same time, and there's a lot of great in this country, and if there wasn't, I wouldn't still be here. There's a lot of amazing people, and if anything, the last couple of years have shown how quick we are to stand up for the things that are just right,
Oh yeah,
and how quickly we will come together in defense of somebody who needs it or to support somebody who needs it. But it's not enough, and I don't think it's ever going to be enough because no matter how noble you might think a cause is or how much you do for it, you're still you. And it can be awkward to be put in a situation where you're being asked to acknowledge your privilege when you're not educated enough to know what that privilege is in the first place.
yeah,
And that's something I came to realize very quickly too, was that when somebody said to me, "You benefit from white privilege," I immediately got inwardly defensive, saying, "Well, I've had a hard time too." But I don't. That's the wrong way of looking at it. That's not what it refers to. It's referring to the fact that by virtue of being white, you are having an easier time of it, and
yeah,
it's because you're not educated enough on what the opposite of that is to really have a good enough frame of reference to be offended by it.
and like there was no uh, so-called oppression for you, I guess, in a way.
No, no, not even remotely. I mean, people. A lot of Irish people who live in America will say, well, when Irish immigrants came to Ellis Island, they were subjected to racism afterwards, and were, the whole signs in New York windows saying no dogs, no Irish people, no blacks, or whatever the order was. It was all bad. But,
Ah,
and there was definitely prejudice. But, I mean, yeah, it sucked, but we can't use that as, well, we went through that too.
yeah,
We were not treated that bad. It was bad for the people at the time, but it's not an equivalency that works, I believe.
no, definitely not.
But anyway, Jesus, what are we doing here? This is like I feel like a radio guest who came in to support my run for Congress. Jesus.
But see, that's what I was going towards. I was going towards, well, I'll ask one question and we'll see where it goes.
Right.
And
Yeah. Well, God, we got heavy really quickly.
doesn't say, and here we are, like almost 40 minutes later.
Sorry about that.
No,
I'm
no,
not,
that's
I'm not known for my brevity.
it was exactly what I was wanting.
Well,
Uh,
and that's the problem with me though, is that I have the same problem with I never know when to shut up, and the biggest problem that people have with my books is they're never long enough. You would think that the one would like facilitate the other, but
yeah,
apparently
exactly. Um, okay, so speaking of which, when did you want to pursue writing as your career? Like, this is what I want to do.
Honestly, it seems like an easy or romantic answer to say it, but it honestly, as far as I can tell, it's the truth. Is that always.
Hmm.
I remember a brief period when I was really really young, like probably 7 or 8, where I wanted to be Matlock.
Oh man,
I didn't want to be a lawyer. I wanted to be him.
yeah,
It might have had something to do with the suits. I don't know, but I just wanted every week of my life to be an episode of his. And then I started watching Ironside and oh shit, what is it? Raymond Burr, Perry Mason.
oh okay,
And then I started realizing that the common theme was that yes, I did actually want to become a lawyer. I was 7.
oh man,
I was 7 years of age, and I wanted to be a criminal defense attorney. And only because I wanted to be clever enough to catch people out in their lies, you know.
yeah,
And then I wanted to be a fireman, and then an archaeologist, and then an astronaut. And then once the bug hit me, the reading bug took over, I decided I wanted to write those stories. And I think what that thing I mentioned earlier about reading Pet Sematary, I think I was 8 or 9.
oh man,
Yeah. And then I thought, right, not only do I know I want to write things that make people feel this way, scared, enjoying being scared, you know. I don't want to traumatize anyone.
yeah. It's just kind of funny that you went that route as opposed to wanting to be like a John Grisham type.
Yeah, you would think so. And it's weird because I started reading John Grisham just like along with everybody else as soon as he made it big.
Because he started out as a lawyer, didn't he?
He did, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I unfortunately still have not read anything by John Grisham.
They're pretty good. I mean, I haven't read them in a long time, but when, things like The Firm and The Pelican Brief and A Time to Kill, all those came out, I was absolutely lost in those. I thought they were fantastic.
I was gonna say that's a good little run right there. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah, very much. And, yeah, it is actually interesting that I never went there. I think it was just a matter of what I was exposed to and when.
Mm-hmm.
And it hit the right kind of note for me. And I come from a culture where storytelling was, you still had people sitting around the fire when I was a kid telling ghost stories, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted that. I had the bug. I just wanted to tell people ghost stories, and it just happened that I had a love for reading at the same time and decided that the two of them together was pretty cool, and it was something I really wanted to do, but I didn't, obviously when you're that young, you don't know the logistics of it. You don't know if it's a viable ambition.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So I went for journalism and graduated in that, and like I said earlier, no jobs, so I started writing stories instead.
You eventually didn't you say you eventually became a private investigator?
Fraud investigator.
Fraud investigator.
Yeah, private investigator would have been way cooler.
Yeah.
Because then I would have had my own office with my name on the door, and I'd be an alcoholic sipping from that bottle of whiskey in the lower drawer.
Doing your own voiceovers.
Doing my own narration for every day of my life, yeah. More so than I already do.
So is a fraud investigator more of an office job?
Yeah, more of a cubicle job. It's
okay.
It was basically, it's not nearly as interesting as it sounds. It was basically where working for a credit card company, and basically somebody dumping evidence onto your computer and said, here's where everything went wrong for all of these accounts across all of these platforms. Find the common link, narrow that down to find information on the where, the how, and the who. Put them all together. I question suspects within the parameters of what you're allowed to ask and what you're not, which is all very bureaucratic and very frustrating.
Yeah.
And basically come up with the answer and then hire people you never see to go arrest them, and job's done.
Well, I mean, so I mean, you can also look at it as you're the one that gives the orders. Like, oh, hey, I found this guy. You go get him.
Yeah, well, yeah, it was, and I mean, we had a lot of collaboration with law enforcement. So you end up getting to know an awful lot of people in the law enforcement business, the FBI, the ICE, even. You talk to a lot of postal inspectors. It was really interesting. I was enthralled by it, and it was rewarding, but ultimately kind of exhausting too, because you are exposed to the worst of the worst almost all day long.
Yeah, that's true. It's there is something fun about it because I mean, I work retail, and anytime like we catch people stealing and the cops show up, it's always fun to be like, okay, when they come in, it's like, all right, who caught him or who called us, and I'm just automatically like, me. Here's the
Yeah.
rundown. Here's what happened.
Well, and I did that actually back in the day. I did retail security, which makes everybody laugh when they look at me because I look like a clothes hanger with ears. But it was fun. I mean, it was fun up until the moment where you realized why the person was stealing something,
Yeah,
and it was purely because they just needed it.
yeah, that's
So
true.
I
I
was pretty shitty at that job because if I got the sense somebody was doing it out of desperation, they just needed something, I just let them go.
I can see that.
And unfortunately, it was all on camera, and I got asked a lot why I left somebody go. And I was like, "Oh, come on, though! Didn't you see him? They were starving, and it was just a loaf of bread, and a couple of pairs of shoes, and a
Oh man.
couple of diamond bracelets." And so I wasn't good at it. I don't have the heart to be mean to people.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way. Like you said, if I see somebody come stumbling in and just looking like they're tore up, and they grab a bottle of liquor and throw it in their jacket, and it's like, okay, well, that person I'm gonna stop. But then you see
Yeah,
somebody come in looking all withered, and they grab like baby formula, and it's just like, like, damn it, do I really want to stop that person?
yeah. And, that's why I think I lasted 6 months in that job because I think their loss actually went up after they hired me.
Oh man.
Yeah. So I don't know. I only took the job out of desperation myself. I mean, like I said, the economy was in the toilet, so getting any job was a good thing, and I just didn't like getting in there every morning, and what I had to look forward to for the day was not, as the brochure told me, to safeguard the contents of this retail store, and more, how many people am I going to really just fuck up their day today?
Yeah, exactly. That it's just funny because when I started at where I work now, I just hit 10 years there about a month ago, maybe.
Yeah,
Um, and I got hired right as the recession in 2008 hit.
yeah,
So I got hired at a very lucky time that I got hired, but also my minimum work hours were 16 hours a week, and I started to live on my own right when I got to my minimums of 16 hours a week, and getting $99 every Friday when you live on your own is not very much at all.
oh God, no.
Yeah, that was.
It's
I always tell people because we get paid every Friday, and I always said I ate like a king from Friday to Sunday, from Monday to Thursday. I ate like a peasant.
Oh man, I can tell you days where I was living for a week. I would live on a cup of soup per day.
Oh yeah,
Everything was the rent, and with nothing for food. And that's why it grates on me these days when you see people online begging for charity. And I have a certain degree of sympathy on a case by case basis, but you have these people going, "Oh my God, I can't make the rent. Will you please help me?" And they ask people for help, and that's fine. But then if you look through their posts over the previous weeks, you see that they're celebrating they just got a new Xbox or something. And I think the idea of what poverty means has really changed over the last few decades. Because for me, poverty meant that if you wanted the lights to stay on, you didn't go to a movie. You just sat on the floor and thanked Christ the lights were going to stay on.
yeah,
Now it's like, oh, I can't make my rent because I went out every night this week. I just bought a new PlayStation, but now I woke up to the reality of what I've done, and somebody else needs to step in and take care of that for me. Because hey, online it's all about making people feel bad so they feel good for you.
yeah. There's reaching out, and then there's basically straight up pandering.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I love helping people out if I can. I understand that life is shit a lot of the time, and if I'm in a position to do something about that, I will.
Oh,
But like
definitely.
like anything else, it's exploitable. It's one of these things that now it's so easy to ask for money and get it that there's very little reason for people not to do it.
Oh yeah. And I don't like when people say, "Oh, you help that person out. It's a very selfish thing." And it's like, well, why is that a selfish thing? I helped them out, and they're like, well, because you got gratification from it. It's like, well, yeah, I got gratification from it. I like to help people out, and it's like, no, you knew you were going to get that gratification, and that is the only reason why you helped them out. And it's like, can't I just do a damn good thing for somebody? Why does it always have
That's
to?
absolutely preposterous.
You know?
If you're someone who goes out on the street and gives a homeless guy a suit of clothes, $10,000 and a cheeseburger, and films it, and then puts it on YouTube with sad music playing over it, okay, you might be slightly guilty of manipulating your audience, and you're doing it not just because you're a good person, but because you know you're going to get attention. That's one thing.
Mm-hmm.
But Jesus, helping people out is now something you can be accused of doing to be selfish.
Yeah,
that's like the motto of everything that's gone wrong in the last fucking 20 years in this country, in the world.
You have to be doing everything for a reason. You can't do it just to do it.
Well, that says more about the person saying that to you than it does about you. I mean, seriously, if they're looking for the sneaky motive, I don't know.
I mean, there's been times when, you will see a homeless person and walk into the store, walk out and buy them a sandwich and hand it to them and, say, hey, here you go. And don't tell anybody about it. You just did it.
Yep.
Because they needed it.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I would tell you about some of the amazingly charitable things that I've done, but then I'd be telling you about it.
Yeah, see, there you go. It's a very selfish thing to do, damn it.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm the worst. If you're expecting anything better from me, you haven't done your research.
That sounds like me, though.
Oh yeah, I'm an awful, awful person.
See, we keep circling back around to social issues.
I'm just old enough now to be reflective on my life, and I think I was kind of a bit of an asshole. But at the same time, I'm trying to make up for it too. So there's that. There's one thing to acknowledge who you have been, and there's another thing to actually acknowledge it, learn from it, and try to do better. But
yeah.
Nah, I'm just kidding. I've always been an absolute, just gold standard person. Sorry, I almost said that without laughing. But...
almost got through it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of the things I was wanting to ask is, obviously you're very popular on Bookstagram, and one of the most popular of your works that's on there is Kin.
Yeah.
And what I wanted to ask is it pretty obvious where you got your inspiration for that one? Like Texas Chainsaw Massacre kind of, and 70s exploitation movies and things like that?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And what it was, the origin of that was, I can't even remember what it was, but a long time ago on a message board I used to frequent, people were talking about movies like Wrong Turn and Texas Chainsaw Massacre and all those, all of which I enjoyed to some degree, but I made what I thought was a legitimate complaint, because it's what I felt about those movies and still do, is that, yeah, they're good. And they're great representations of both the time period in which they were made and the culture and their statements. Usually the good ones are statements about something like Texas Chainsaw Massacre was largely assumed to be a criticism of Vietnam.
Okay.
And I thought, but imagine how much better there would be if we knew the characters. Like if we had some depth to the killers themselves and the victims, how much more invested we would be in everything that happened if we legitimately cared about these people, if there was dimensions to them. And of course, as you can imagine, this being the internet, I got the usual backlash. That's not what they're fucking supposed to be there. Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, all right. Well, I'm not disrespecting the movies. I appreciate them a great deal for what they are. I have been as entertained by them as anybody else. Little less so as I get older, but I guess that's kind of natural.
Yeah, and what really made me want to pick it up was, I had seen a lot of people posting about it, and I was just like, okay, well maybe it's time to look in and see what this is about. And I can't remember where it was, but something had said, have you ever wondered about what happened to the girl at the end of Texas Chainsaw Massacre and what happened when she got home? it said like it basically said like this is that story, and I was just like, oh shit, like I really love the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original, and to me when I read the synopsis for Ken, I was like, holy shit, this is what should have been more or less Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2.
Right, right. Well, and I mean, that's it, yeah. It was, I wanted to write something. I had no interest in just writing a version of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. In no way did that interest me, or anything similar. You know, I didn't want to just do, oh, teens in peril get fucked up, one escapes, the end.
Yeah.
I wanted to humanize everyone, from the victims to the killers, and particularly the killers. I wanted to say, well, it's not enough for me in whatever I do. It's not enough to just say, well, they were all crazy and just went after people with axes and chainsaws, and that's just how it is.
Yeah.
I wanted to try and understand what confluence of events and beliefs and everything would motivate somebody not just to do that, but to think that that was what needed to be done for a noble purpose, like that there was a cause. And again, once I had that early, that if I was going to do it, I wanted to know who these people were. And the clincher for me was exactly what you just said there. What I imagined was, okay, so if you look at any of these movies, and the final girl, which has now, of course, become a term people prefer, we don't use anymore, so the survivor, we'll say, what the hell kind of life is waiting for her? Because it's usually a female. She escapes. We, as the audience, are relieved that she got away, but imagine that character coming back home and thinking back on all that she saw, the loss of her friends.
Oh, God, yeah.
How do you acclimate to the life of a survivor after something so atrocious? And once those two things came together for me, that's when I sat down. I said, all right. And then the third thing was I went to a wedding, and we passed through Alabama. It was my first time going through there. And people say, well, Alabama's not all rednecks and blah, blah. And I know it isn't. It's a beautiful state. But what I saw was the tree that opens the book and a cotton field. And I had never seen cotton growing in the wild, and I just lost my mind for it.
Yeah.
I thought, this is amazing. And it was all wispy, and the sun was shining, and there was all these little motes floating across the field, and I just thought, all right, there's where we start. So I went to the wedding. I was nodding politely to everybody, but I was already writing it in my head. Mm-hmm. And then I got home, and I think I wrote the first 100 pages in probably 3 days.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, so I was on fire then. From then on, I just went with it. But yeah, that's where that comes from, and I'm glad it resonates so much with readers. I don't think I could write that book now. I don't think I'd want to, for starters, because it kind of grosses me out.
I was going to say, it seemed like it might have been, once you finished, you're like, all right, I'm glad I did that, and I'm actually glad I'm done, because that was a little draining.
Exactly. It's out of me now. Go away, you hideous beast. Back into, But people dig it, and I love that. I mean, that's ultimately why we do it. But, yeah, it's not one that I'm eager to reread myself,
I think I found out about it, I think it was this year, but didn't you write that a few years ago? Isn't it a few years old now?
It was... Oh, man, I'm useless with this stuff. I think it was probably 2010, maybe?
Oh, okay. See, I was going to say 2012. Wow. So it was a...
You might be right, actually. You might be right about that. I mean, the books are behind me here, but I don't want to get up to look at them. It could be, yeah. You're probably right if that's what it is. I know it's around there somewhere.
So it was definitely a slow burn to get to the level of popularity that it is now.
Oh yeah, I mean, when these books came out, most of them were released as limited editions from small press publishers, so they'd have maybe a print run of 500-600 maybe.
Oh, okay.
And once those sold out, that was it. You could get them on eBay probably, but you wouldn't be able to just pick it up and read it. So what happened was then a few years ago, when the digital explosion thing happened on Kindle and everywhere else, I made all the books available there, and its popularity started to increase once people could just pick it up that easily.
Yeah, definitely. That's how I read it. I was like, well, I really want to read this now, and I am impatient even with Amazon's 2-day shipping. I was like, I'm just gonna buy the damn Kindle version and then I'll get the paperback later, which is exactly what I did, and flew through that book in 2 days.
Yeah, well, that's great. And I mean, that's one of the things I love about the Kindle, too, is that I went from kind of the moderate popularity, which is really all you can expect from limited edition publishers, where, only the amount of people who read the book, that'll basically be your audience.
Mm-hmm.
And when the print run is limited, so too is the audience. But then when the digital thing came around, that allowed it to become infinite, and it was such a radical change.
Yeah, I've seen the Cemetery Dance editions of Kin, and I'm just so jealous I don't own one of those yet.
God, they're beautiful. And I mean, that's the thing, that for all the paperbacks I might put out myself, the original limited editions of, I think, everything I have done are just absolute beauties. I have them all here behind me, but they're gorgeous books to look at, and high production values as well, which better than the mass market ones, because lower print runs means you can give them extra attention, can spend more on the materials and everything. Mm-hmm. And they got bells and whistles and everything's beautiful.
So do you only have like one copy of each book, or do you ask for like a handful?
Well, they send you, like back when those came out, they would send you about 20 copies of them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which promptly vanished because, once you get them, everybody wants one, and it's Happy Christmas, lazy Christmas presents.
I'd be happy, that's for sure.
Happy Christmas, here's a book about people getting cut up to pieces.
From somebody you know.
Yeah, exactly, yeah, from me. Yeah.
Well, according to Amazon, it says the Kindle version, it says published January 4th, 2012. I don't know if that's that particular edition or if Cemetery Dance came out before that.
That's what that would have been. You know what? I want to say that came out 2012, and that would put, I think, the limited edition right around between 2008 and 2010.
Oh, wow. Okay. Oh, damn. So it's almost 10 years old at this point.
Yep. Oh,
damn.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been around a while. I mean, the Turtle Boy came out in 2003, I think.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that's the one that kind of put me on the map. It won the Stoker Award, and after that, people started going, "Who's this son of a bitch who came out of nowhere?"
Yeah, I was gonna ask, what was your very like your first successful one where you were like, "Damn, this is doing something," but I'm gonna guess it's that one, because once you get a Stoker Award, you're like, all right, maybe it is worth something.
It was, and I would argue how much it's worth, because like the further I get away from the earliest books, the less I like them. I can't help but look at them and see everything that's wrong with them.
I can see that.
Yeah, and it's I'm sure I'd be stunned if any other writer didn't have the exact same problem, that once you get a bit of distance, you look back on it and you're more assured in your writing, you've gotten better at it, and you look back at the old stuff and go, what I wouldn't give to just rewrite that again. But at the time, it struck what seems to be that perfect note of nostalgia for people who loved It and Stand By Me or The Body novella, and Robert McGammon's Mystery Walk and Boy's Life. It just seemed to hit that sweet note for people who love to read about American childhood. So I don't know. I don't know really what it was. I have to assume that that's what it was, because, it's a short story, but people really seem to dig it, which really surprised me. And it surprised me even more to win that award, because I think that year it was up against the Stephen King novella as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and once that happened and I won it, I knew it was all rigged.
Yeah, right. It's like, how much did they pay you for this?
Yeah. Why Stephen King decided to throw me a bone and go, give it to that poor Irish guy.
Have you, by chance, ever spoken to him at all about anything, or?
No, I've dealt with him through his representative, Marcia DeFilippo, because I put together an anthology a few years, but Jesus, 10 more than that years ago, called Quietly Now, which was a tribute anthology to Charles L. Grant. Mm-hmm. So we dealt with him then to get a story from him for that. But no, I mean, I don't even know what I would say to him.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. How's it going? All right. Talk to you later.
Yeah. Thanks. Or,
Are you currently working on things right now? Or are you always working on something?
Always. Yeah. I'm actually, And it's so friggin' great to be able to say this. I cannot articulate how happy I am to be able to say this. But I've written a lot of novellas. There's been a couple of collections, things that have come out over the past few years. But it's been 6 years since I wrote my last novel.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm about, I would say, 75 pages away from finishing a new one.
Oh, right on.
Yeah, so it's, and I haven't, my output in that regard, I write a lot of short stuff. I think I've written over 200 short stories and novellas and stuff, but as far as novellas or novels go, I think this will be the sixth one.
Do you just prefer short stories, or do you just like writing them more?
No, I find them easier to write.
Yeah.
I have, and this is no exaggeration, at the very least, I have 1 million words of unfinished stories and novels on my hard drive.
Oh, okay.
Easily 1 million. And that was the last time I did an estimate of it, and that was a few years ago, so I don't know. But I find that I can control novellas and short stories more, that I'm confident in the world I'm building. I know the start, middle, and end. When it comes to novels, I frequently peter out of it. I talk myself out of it an awful lot. I'll have written 100 pages and then go, well, this is a pile of shit. Good night.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it happens all the time. And this one, usually it's years of being in my head before I'm ready to sit down and write it. Like Kin, I think, was 3 years of me thinking about it before I finally thought I was ready to write it.
Oh, man.
Yeah, but this one, I had no idea for it. I hadn't planned it. I sat down, wrote one page one morning at 2 a.m., left it there, went to bed, woke up the following morning, started writing it again, and a month later, I had 60,000 words, I think, done.
I was gonna ask if you think it's gonna be longer than usual, or just right on par with everything else.
No, it's going to be a lot longer than anything I've done.
Oh, right on.
I say now pre-editing. I mean, at the moment, it's looking like it's going to be very long, but whether I decide or my agent decides or an editor decides, it could end up being a lot shorter.
Yeah, that's true.
It could be 10 pages long.
So if things go as perfectly as they can, are you looking at maybe having that out by this time next year?
I don't know, because usually what I did with the shorter stuff was I would write it, get it edited after editing it myself, get it proofread, do the rounds of readers, design the covers, stick it up on Amazon. Maybe if it was long enough, bring it out on paperback, and there you go, it's done. But this will be the first novel I've written where I had an agent. So I'm just going to basically, when this is done, hand it to her, see what she thinks of it, and if she likes it, start shopping it around. It could end up in New York. That's the hope always, of course. If it doesn't, I'll get it back, rewrite it, and maybe do it myself. I don't know. We'll see. I don't have great plans for it. I haven't planned anything. I've just been writing it.
Yeah, I feel like you can't focus too much on after you finish writing it. You have to stay focused on writing it.
Yeah, but it's usually, even in the past, I've had some notion of what I was going to do once it was done. And with this one, honestly, it's very refreshing, because I feel like I'm writing this one for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that if it doesn't work out, or if it's a pile of shit, who knows, that I'll just move on to the next one. And I have 3 more planned that I hope to get done by the end of next year.
Oh, right on.
Yeah.
Is everything else, like everything else you have physically released, for the most part, is that all self-published?
Well, it was most of it, I would say, probably 90% of it was published with Cemetery Dance or other small press places first, and then I went and did them digitally and put out the paperbacks myself.
Oh,
but
right on.
The last few that I've released, I did completely myself, like Sour Candy and Blanky and all that stuff.
Oh God, those two are just messed me up. I told you not too long ago about when I finished Blanky in a certain scene. Just like I said, I had everybody in the break room at work looking at me because the hands just flew up to my face.
There is no greater compliment that you can give a writer, particularly a horror writer, than to say that that's the reaction that it evoked, because ultimately that's why we do it. We do it to entertain, and we do it to get elicit a reaction from you. And once you do that, then I consider it a success.
Yeah, I mean, that's why. I mean, I'm assuming that's why people want to read. It's why I read, is to, hopefully come across something I've never seen before or imagined, basically. And yeah, there was definitely a scene in that one where I was just like, holy shit, that I have never seen that before.
Excellent.
um, do you have a favorite work of your own, or do you just kind of consider them all your babies? Or
No, I hate them all.
that sounds about right.
I actually, that's putting it too harshly, but it's not a million miles from the truth, and it's very upsetting for people to hear this, so I never harp on about it. But like what I said there about the Turtle Boy, while I like them all as products of the time in my life in which they were written, and I think I did a good enough job for the writer I was at any given point, I don't really like very many of them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we'll say the most popular by a country mile is Kin. Everybody seems to dig that. And the people who don't, I agree with why they don't. I think, yeah, you're right, that sucked. But, it only matters that people enjoy it. It doesn't really matter what I think of them. And honestly, if I thought that everything I had written was really, really great, I think it would affect my awareness of how much I always will need to improve.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I will die never having gotten good enough by my own standards. And,
yeah, I can understand that.
And I think that that's how it's supposed to be. I think that if you can sit there and think you're a fantastic writer, you're just amazing and have nothing left to learn, then I think you're done.
Yeah, then it's going to just become products of your ego as opposed to just your imagination.
Yep, 100% correct. And there's things like I'll tell you when I love my books the most is when I hear from people like you talking about that part in Blanky that gave you that reaction.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I'm immensely proud of having written that story, because it got that reaction. The same with Sour Candy, when people have said, Jesus, I was freaking out when I read it. My husband read it after me and he freaked out too. I'm delighted then. That is no word of a lie, no exaggeration. That legitimately changes the tone of my day when I hear that, because I just imagine, those audience reaction videos, which I can't stand, but those like night vision audience reaction commercials they show for things like Paranormal Activity. I hate that bullshit, but it kind of feels like that. It kind of feels like you get a sneak peek at the audience reacting to something that you labored over and that you put your heart and soul into, and all of a sudden they're going, "Duh!" Jesus.
Yeah, A24, who put out Hereditary, they were releasing an image of people's heart rates, and they were saying that it might just be a marketing ploy, but they were saying watching that movie is equivalent to 2 hours of exercise, and they're showing several heart rates, and they're slowly rising throughout the movie, but as soon as it hits the 90-minute mark, a lot of people's heart rates went up to like 165 beats a minute, and then kind of petered out after that 90-minute mark, which, if you've seen the movie, which I know you have, that 90-minute mark is when shit just goes haywire.
I absolutely, and you know what? It's funny because I go to see almost every horror movie that's worth seeing that comes out. Like, even if it's divided reaction among audiences, if it makes me curious, I'll go see it, because I love to see what a particular director, writer, actors will do with something. But I can tell you honestly now, because it's funny, even today, again, I'm having a real hard time shaking that film.
Oh, yes, definitely.
It is sticking with me in ways that only a handful of movies ever have, where you just keep, out of the blue, flashing on something from it and going, fuck.
Yes. I mean, I like scary movies, and not a whole lot of things scare me in general, like outside of movies. Like, I'm not afraid of ghosts, or, I'm not afraid of something being underneath the bed or whatnot. But we got home from watching the movie that night, getting ready to go to sleep, and my girlfriend tells me, she's like, "Oh, can you go, make sure the front door is locked?" I said, "Yeah." I start walking out there. I got about midway through my living room, and I kind of just stopped because it was pitch black out there. I kind of stopped and just like looked around the room really slowly, checked the doorknob, and just ran back to the room.
Yeah, and you know what? That's the thing I love about it, is that if you go to see a movie where it's all jump scares. You'll probably jump, go, Jesus. But you get home and you're all giggly and laughing about it.
Exactly.
Oh, that was a fun roller coaster ride or a little trip through the ghost house. But I'm over it now, and it's like McDonald's. That's it. You're done.
Yeah, just filler.
But these are the ones, and while I have a certain appreciation for the jump scare ones too, it's not my favorite, but I like to be scared and jump and have a reaction like that every now and again. But the ones that I enjoy the most and the stuff that I try to write is the stuff that gets under your skin.
Mm-hmm.
The stuff that lingers, where you're sitting there eating a friggin' taco outside in the sunshine at 7 p.m. on an afternoon having a laugh with your friends, and you'll turn and look at some woman walk into her car and get flashed by a desolate scene from a movie that you watched that just will not leave you alone.
Exactly.
Or it kind of it evokes some existential dread in you when you're watching it. So, and the problem is, like, what I noticed from a lot of the reaction to Hereditary is people going in expecting to be jumping out of their seats and like they were electrocuted.
Yeah, and it's funny because I was expecting some jump scares because for the most part you can't see any movie without some form of a jump scare, and I did jump one time in that movie, and I honestly don't know why, because it wasn't a loud noise, it wasn't a music cue or anything. It was just the sound effect that I feel like the movie is going to become known for. Unfortunately, like as good as a movie as it is, I feel like it's going to be known for that one specific sound effect that is used effectively. Yes. I did jump one time when that happened, and like I said, I can't tell you why, but I did.
No,
jump.
I think I get it. I think I know exactly the moment you're talking about. We won't ruin it for anybody, of course. But
Yeah.
I think I know when you're talking about because I jumped too.
Oh man, if it is the same moment, that is gonna then maybe it was effective. They did it perfectly, but the rest of the movie, I just found myself white knuckling my the arms in the chair and leaning back in my seat, just overwhelming sense of dread the entire time.
And that's it. And I think that's the difference. There are two ways that horror movies affect me. There's the pretzel and there's the dance. The dance is like blue, and your arms are going everywhere because you got shocked. But the pretzel is where you're trying to tie yourself in knots, make yourself as small as possible down into that seat. And you're like, oh my God, what the fuck did I just see?
That is a perfect metaphor for that.
But that's it. And the ones I remember, the ones that endure, are the ones that have the hair actually standing up, and I'm crouched down in my seat looking at it going, oh my God, that's so wrong. What is that? Why is that happening?
Yeah, and see, and there's movies that have jump scares and they use them effectively, but also like it may be a jump scare type, but when it happens, you don't even jump, you just grip your seat even tighter.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a really good effective use of that in the first Insidious movie, which I love. A lot of people don't like it for whatever reason, but I really like the Insidious movies. Well, the first two, I haven't seen the latest, and the third one was kind of to me.
Yeah.
But it's when the mom is telling the story of Patrick Wilson's character when he was a kid, and then you hear that like tree branch snapping sound, and then it cuts to the shot of him, but that red-faced demon is standing behind him, and like, yeah, it's a really loud jump scare, but I did not jump whatsoever. I just wanted to sink into the floor even more to get away from that image.
Do you know what got me, actually, speaking of images from that, is I love, and it's something I actually really appreciate about James Wan's movies, is how creative he gets with the scares.
Oh yeah.
And the part that got me, I think it was Insidious, I'm pretty sure it is where the man is pacing outside the room.
Yes.
And he goes over and back, and on his next comeback, he's inside the fucking room.
Yes.
And what I find myself marveling at is who sits down and says, how about this? There's a guy pacing outside, and on his return arc, he's inside. And I'm there going, you sick bastard.
The same one actually was a very effective use, is when she goes to check in on the baby, and it's really cool because the camera's following her. She walks into the baby's room, and the camera lingers on the room for maybe 2 seconds, and you're looking at the room, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh shit, there's somebody in the corner, and like right when you realize it is when they play the music and she gets scared and everything, and it was just so effective how they did that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that level of creativity because there's so much lazy horror out there. You know, it's like we'll say for example the found footage thing, which still does have its moments, but usually it's a bunch of screaming asshole kids inside a building in night vision, and suddenly there's a thing in the corner with a stretch mouth, and then everyone's running away.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I like it when you try to get like that. Jerusalem was a bit of an attempt to do something different with that, and I kind of dug that one actually.
Jerusalem?
Especially yeah, it's Jerusalem with a Z in the middle.
Huh. I don't think I've ever heard of it.
Yeah, that one kind of took a religious angle, which I found very interesting. You know, about it's the typical stranger in a strange land, fish out of water type thing with these tourists, but it got sufficiently oppressive for me to start to feel their panic instead of just rolling my eyes because there's a bunch of shaky cam and people screaming.
Yeah.
Plus, I think they used Google eyeglasses.
Oh, okay.
Or whatever the hell they're called.
Uh-huh.
So it was a bit more stable than your usual guy inexplicably carrying his VHS camcorder down a flight of stairs while he's been chased by werewolves or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was enjoyable. But it's, you know, there's a lot of laziness out there. If we copy this and just do it a different way, it'll be just, you know, we'll make some bit of money off Amazon or whatever.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then you have somebody who takes the tradition and says, okay, we're going to make a ghost house movie. How do we take an entire subgenre that's, you know, that has been mined to death and do it in a different way? That at least is enough to get me in the theater because I want to see that. I want to see how are you going to startle jaded people?
Exactly.
You know, and I like that about James Wan's stuff and some of those Blumhouse movies is that they just, you walk in with this cockiness going, scare me then.
Yeah.
And they do. They manage.
I did that going to see The Conjuring 2. I was like, there's no way this is going to be as scary and effective as the first one, and holy shit, it was.
Yeah, I liked that, and part of that I think might be familiarity with that case, you know, that it's based on.
True.
Like, you know, it was all bullshit, but it was interesting because you're when you get older, you look back on all those things and go, God, how was I so naive to actually think that any of that was true? But at the same time, when I first became aware of them, you were a kid, and you were reading them in these grainy magazines about the paranormal, and you wanted to believe them.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, that one worked for me, too. I did like those. So I've liked those two Conjurings, and I liked the first two Insidious as well. I haven't seen the third one.
I don't know. I just didn't find it. I mean, it was, you know, directed by Lee Wanell, who wrote the first two and wrote the. No, he didn't write The Conjuring. Or did he write The Conjuring? I can't remember now. But I know he has written all the Insidious films, but the third one he directed, and it just didn't have the same feel. And to me, I mean, I won't ruin anything in the event you watch it, but the only time I genuinely got scared in the same sense of watching the other ones is the like final shot in the whole movie. The shot happens, it ends, and then I'm like, damn it, why couldn't that have happened multiple times throughout this entire movie?
Well, that's the thing, though. I mean, the longer that sequels go on, I think you just get a natural fatigue from the similar setups, and, you know, it gets, I think, increasingly harder for the people who write and direct them to to consistently come up with stuff that's as effective.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, you try to come up with new ways, but you're just kind of rehashing things at this point.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I don't ever want to, like, everything I've written, people write to me and go, is there going to be a sequel to this? And I'm like, you know what, I would always be open to the idea of it. I have so many different things I want to write about that the idea of revisiting any one thing I've already written is less appeal, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if you're working on an idea and you're like, oh, this sounds similar to this, and then you keep fleshing it out, and then you go, well, damn, maybe this can be a sequel to that, because it's, you know, it sounds like a continuation of it, basically.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing is, like, there are sequel ideas to most of the bigger ones. Like, I mean, I have, almost start to finish, I have a sequel idea for Kin, which is actually a prequel, not a sequel. But
oh, man.
Yeah, I mean, I have pretty much the whole of that in my head, but it doesn't matter. Once it needs to be written, that's when I'll write it. I couldn't write it because somebody demanded it, you know?
Yeah, that's what I liked about what Stephen King has said about some of the stories that people don't really like or take to, and he's like, well, you know what? That was the story that my head was telling me needed to be written. I wrote it. It's out there. I'm on to the next one now.
Well, yeah, and that's exactly right, because this novel I'm finishing up now is one I hadn't planned at all, and when it started, I didn't know what it was. So I just followed the thread, and it turns out it's going to be one of the most, I'd say, personal things I've written ever.
Oh man, I feel like that's good because I feel like people can definitely tell while they're reading this.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, it has a framework of being a horror story, but there's an awful lot of, I don't know, self-analysis and probably self-therapy involved in it. I don't know. It's too early yet for me to have an objective view of what it is. And even when I do decide what it is, it's probably going to differ to what everybody else sees it as. So, you know,
Hmm.
I don't know.
And I meant to say this earlier when we were talking about uh, Blanky, and it's so funny because you know we started this off with you talking about Pet Cemetery, and I got very heavy Pet Cemetery vibes from Blanky. Obviously because of the subject matter of the
Yeah.
very traumatic thing of a child dying, but also just the way the characters were dealing with it and the loss and like it's very emotionally draining, but in a good sense. It's like that's why you read Pet Cemeteries because you want that drama, you want these characters to go through these things, and that's I feel like you definitely achieved that in just the 50-60 pages that Blanky is.
Well, thank you. I mean, that's great to hear, because it's always, you know, I kind of stack the odds against myself with that one, because nobody really will admit to, and nobody probably wants to read about the death of a child. It is something that, you know, it's hard to even think about, and it was definitely hard to write about, because I'll tell you, one of the questions people ask me a lot, kind of on a par with when you asked me which of my books is my favorite, or is um, what's the most fun you've ever had writing? Like, what books were fun to write? And sometimes the assumption is that they all are,
Hmm.
and that's not true in my case anyway. There's a couple of books I've written that were just absolute torture to write, and Blanky's one of them. Jack and Jill would be another. And
I that,
converse,
that's another one I've seen that's really popular that I have yet to get to, but I really want to.
you know, those left me completely wrecked after writing them. Like, I had no fun at all writing them, and that's all right. I don't, you know, if I'm writing material like that, I don't think I should be having fun. Not
Yeah,
if I want them to be honest, you know, or if I expect from readers to have a genuine reaction to them, then I shouldn't be sitting here cackling away while I'm writing about such awful things.
yeah. I can almost imagine the type of person who would write something like that and then come out of your office and just totally giggling, and your significant other's like, what? And you're like, oh, read what I just wrote, and they read and look at you and like, what the hell is wrong with you? Why are you laughing about this?
Yeah, they would have therapy on speed dial.
Oh god, yeah.
No, that Blanky was a really hard one. I didn't write for a month after writing that, you know. And usually, I finish something, I'll take maybe a few days off, go do something mindless, play video games, catch up on movies or shows or whatever.
Yeah.
That one I didn't want to write for about a month after it. I just was kind of depressed.
Just really hard to shake off.
Yeah, it was. You know, it's not fun to write about horrible things happening to good people, and I did legitimately believe that these were good people.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But then conversely, because, you know, the lie in that is that I wrote something like The Tent,
Hmm.
which people were kind of, and I had an absolute blast fucking them up.
See, that's different when if you write people who, I mean, I like to write down ideas, but I am by no stretch of the imagination a writer, uh, parentheses yet. But I feel like if you were to, like you said, you write characters you care about and have bad things happen to them, you feel really bad. But if you write shitty people with these terrible things happening to them, you just have so much fun.
Yeah. Well, and then, you have the things like Sour Candy, where I don't think that the main character, Phil, was a bad guy. And
oh, yeah, no.
he gets a bad run.
Oh, man.
And I had an absolute blast with that story. I just loved every minute that I was working on it. And weirdly enough, I didn't want it to end, but I ended it where it basically dictated it needed to.
See, that's good.
Yeah, I think if I'd milked it, I would have lost some of the effect of it. And people always say that, oh, I wish it was longer. And I know that, it's great to hear that you want to spend more time in that world, but maybe if it had been longer, you wouldn't have, because you'd have found, oh, it was great up until the last 10 pages.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's what it was. It was what it needed to be. But Jesus, I can't remember ever having so much fun writing something.
I'm really glad I read that one before my whole dental escapade.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I'll tell you one thing, where I was using kind of a description of saying, it'd be bad if you came out after writing something cackling madly. I legitimately, no word of a lie, was cackling while I was writing that. If anyone had seen me, they would have immediately called somebody, because I was just tittering away here at the keyboard, just sniggering and fucking chuckling and going.
Oh man, that's
because
funny.
It was so much fun. For starters, everything in the first everything before the car accident at the beginning is real. That all happened to me.
Oh wow.
And I have misophonia, where I have an adverse, lots of people do, I have an adverse reaction to certain sounds. And babies crying, and I don't blame the babies or parents or anything like that. It's a fact of life, it's okay. But I went into Walmart one Saturday afternoon, and this kid was in there shrieking his fucking lungs out. I expected to see them hanging out of his mouth like airbags.
Oh man.
And I found myself like repelled by the sound, but also somewhat curious to see if somebody was being murdered. It was that bad.
Oh wow.
And I went over, and his mom is the mom in the story. She was standing there with her hair all bedraggled. She looked like she'd thrown the coat on just so she wouldn't be naked. And was staring at these bags in the candy aisle, in the sour candy. And the kid was staring at me. When he spotted me coming around the corner, he stared at me and let out, doubled down on the screaming and screamed. And I thought for a second I actually saw the air move around that scream.
Just
like he
vapor coming out of him.
Like he was fucking Aquaman or something,
Man.
It's air kind of bending when he did that, and I just went, okay, bye.
Yeah. I was like, did your curiosity go away and just your fright showed up?
I had to go away because my ears started to hurt. And I did see people standing around shopping, and they were just looking with these daggers, like, I want to murder that child.
And it was at a Walmart?
It was at a Walmart.
Yeah,
and
that sounds about right.
After that, I walked out into the sunshine, and I thought, Jesus, thank God that's over. And I thought, but imagine if it wasn't. Imagine if I got home and that kid was standing there waiting for me. And he called me Dad. And once I did that,
oh,
here we go. We're on now.
See, I feel like that's what I was going to, ask like about like influences where like you get your stories, but it's things like that. It's always okay, well, this situation happened and then it was over, but what if?
Well, what if? It's always the what if. Always.
What if it kept going?
The Blanky was basically, I woke up one morning. I think I was hungover. I used to be a hardcore drinker. I don't drink anymore, but back in the day, I used to have these. I'd wake up in the morning hungover and I'd actually be still asleep and dreaming. And weird shit used to happen around the room. And I thought I was convinced I was wide awake and this shit was happening to me. And I used to wake up with my heart exploding out of my chest from the absolute terror of it.
Oh.
There was one where there was a pile of blankets that was really there. This is years ago. It's back in Ireland. And I woke up one night, still drunk, I think. And I rolled over, and there was a baby crawling out of that pile of blankets on the floor.
Oh, my God.
And I woke up screaming so loud there was neighbors knocking at the door. Utter horror. pure undistilled horror before your mind can kick in and try to rationalize things. You're drunk, so you don't have complete control, and it just grabs you in a way that it rarely ever does outside of real life horror.
Yeah.
So that kind of came back to me one night when I woke up here and I was sitting at the edge of the bed, or thought I was, and there was a children's blanket on the floor. And I just looked at it going, okay, there's a children's blanket on the floor. I don't know where it came from, but it's there. And it moved, and I woke up screaming.
Ugh.
And I just kept then, over the years, had this recurring image of a father sitting at the edge of a bed holding a child's blanket and crying. And that's all I had. So that was still all I had when I sat down and started writing that. I just wanted to get that scene out because it was annoying me.
I feel like it's almost like you said, like having a bad dream. They say, if you keep having a recurring nightmare, talk about it, write it down, and it will go away.
That's exactly right. And I mean, I think I have exercised years of trauma of all different types out of me through writing them down. And I like to think that that's why, the best ones work for people on the levels that they do, is because it is me being as honest as I can be about either shit that I've done or shit that's happened to me or worries that I have or anxieties I have. If you can't use your fiction as a place to put all that, then you get stuck living with it.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's why this new one is going to be kind of completely different again, and a radical departure, because it's basically me putting in a veiled version of the story of my life in let me see how best to say this without saying anything. It's kind of, I guess, a metaphorical view of the things that have defined who I am. Like if you take the title Mr. Stitch, which is the working title for the book, Mr. Stitch is basically the idea that we are all walking patchwork results of all the material we've been given since birth.
It's funny because I was going to ask if you can say whether or not it could be classified as a horror novel, but just by that title alone, to me already says hell yeah.
Well, and I've said that a lot of the stuff I've written hasn't been much fun at all. It's weird because I thought if I ever got to a place where I would write something this personal, that it would be absolutely no fun at all. It would be horrible. But it's actually crazy fun. I'm having so much fun with it.
That's good. Hopefully, I mean, obviously we really want to read it, and I'm sure you're going to get a lot of feedback once you do release it.
Well, it's very funny, this one too, because again, you would think something this personal, it would really, really matter to me how it will be received. But honestly, I want it to work and I want people to enjoy it. But if they don't, I still needed to write it.
Yeah.
It's not one of those things that I can just say, oh, you're wrong, it's brilliant. Because it's personal. It has to be brilliant. No, it doesn't. It doesn't have to be anything. I'm just a guy sitting in a room writing a story. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But obviously I hope it does. But if it doesn't, then it's a catastrophic failure. It will still have accomplished something for me that needed to be accomplished. So
it just needed to be out there.
Exactly. And in that regard, I will consider it a success one way or the other. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. And speaking about it being a little personal, I've noticed on your Instagram, other than, it's a book. I mean, I'd say you're definitely a bookstagrammer because you do post pictures of books you're reading as well as your own, or, reposting your books that other users like myself will take of your works.
I love it.
Yeah. And, aside from that and, the occasional selfie here or there, we see a lot of pictures of your dog, who I want to hear about.
I'm surprised you didn't. She was actually barking there a minute ago. I kept
Oh, wow.
her. If I didn't keep her out of the office, usually when I'm writing, she's portraying the role of typical writer dog, and she's asleep at my feet.
Oh, okay.
She crawls in under the desk and just passes out for hours. However long I'm here, she's here. But I kept her out just in case, because what she does, if she hears anyone within yards of the house walking by, she gets all high-pitched bark
going on.
And I didn't want to, have that on your podcast. So, what inspired Blanky?
Yeah.
You're like, okay, he's finally gone fucking insane. Next,
Uh, what is her name?
Red.
Oh, that okay. For some reason, I felt like I knew that, and then I saw another picture, and I was like, I think that is her name, but for now, I'm not so sure.
And you know what? It's kind of it's not the name I would have chosen. It's the name that came with her, so I just decided to leave it. Plus, it kind of reminded me of Jack Ketchum's Red, which isn't the best thing to remember because what happened to that dog wasn't very pleasant. But
I was gonna say I haven't read it, but I know what sets up the story, and I know it's not very good.
yeah, it's basically John Wick, only not.
Kind of if John Wick was like a Charles Bronson type.
Yeah, yeah. But so no, what happened was I love dogs. I've had a number of them throughout my life, but I went to the animal shelter and I was looking at them, and I was just kind of trying to get an idea of the breeds and what I might one day get, not too long in the future. And it was almost exclusively all pit bulls that were in there, which is absolutely a disgrace. It's just everybody seems to want to get rid of these poor animals. So
Yeah.
I was looking through them and was walking by and saying hi to them all, and it looked like there was one empty crate there and no sound coming out of it, nothing. So I was about to walk by. Red comes out with her head bowed and just looked at me with those eyes, and I was completely screwed.
Yeah.
The woman who was like, showing me around and everything like that, I said to her, I want to bring that one home. And she said, wouldn't you like to know about the history and everything? She's been horribly abused. She needs this, she needs that. I don't care. I said, just give her to me. So they gave me the leash, let me take her outside in the yard, and I ran a couple of laps with the dog. Dog was jumping around delighted, and came back in, and the girl was looking at me like she had expected me to change my mind. And I said, no, I don't care. I don't care what the deal is. And she said, well, she's been with two families before, and they didn't know how to handle her. And the last family had children, and she wasn't rough with the children, but they were very loud, and it startled her. She's basically afraid of everything.
Oh man.
So I said, okay, and I filled in the forms, paid the fee, the whole lot, and they said, and here's all the information you need for when you bring her back.
Oh, Jesus.
And in that moment, if there had been a day, and dear Jesus, there's been a few of them, where I might have said, okay, I'm not cut out for this, that ended that. I was like, nope, forget it.
Yeah.
And it does, like, she's most of the time, she just chills out, or she's fun, she wants to play, she's very good around other animals, she loves other dogs, loves kids, everything. She has a moment where she is startled by everything. She will run away if you adjust the light, we'll say, or if she sees a shadow, or if the next door neighbors run their garbage disposal, she can hear the slight hum of it and then runs.
Oh man.
But most of the time, she's just as chill as a dog can be, and she gets absolutely spoiled rotten. I am now near poverty because it's not enough to just get the dog cheap things. I have to get the best of all these things. I swear you would think a kid lives here. There's nothing but toys everywhere.
Oh man. That's and I'm assuming she's just afraid of everything, probably just because of her past trauma and all that.
Yep. Yeah. As you can kind of tell sometimes by, she spends most of her time lying across my feet or up on the couch, nestled against me, sleeping. She feels totally safe with me. But in certain lights, if I'm imposing, if she looks up at me and I'm standing over her, looking threatening, now not like my expression or anything, just my presence there,
Mm-hmm.
she will shrink down herself and start growling because she thinks she's going to be hit.
Oh man.
Yeah. But so much for their take her back policy. We've had her 2 years now almost.
Oh, right on. I remember my grandma used to have a dog that she had her for, man, 12, 13 years, maybe almost 15.
Yeah.
And, she eventually passed of old age, so she said she wanted to wait a little bit before getting another dog, if she was getting another dog. And it just so happened that my my brother's father-in-law brought home a stray one day, and he lived with them for a little while, and eventually he told my grandma, like, hey, why don't you take him and try him out and see if you want to keep him and all that. And she eventually did, but she said one night when they were playing, her and her old dog, what they would do was, she'd roll up a newspaper and just kind of wave it in front of her face, and she would, just attack the newspaper, this and that. And so she was like, oh, that's what we used to do. Let's do that. And so she grabbed the newspaper, rolled it up as soon as and like the dog's playing with her, but as soon as she raised that newspaper, the dog just dropped.
Yeah.
Just straight up dropped, not playing anymore.
Yeah, this isn't funny anymore.
Yeah, exactly. I'm a huge animal lover, so I don't understand people who just disregard animals as things.
I don't, and I mean it enrages me. It still does. Every day I get up, I walk out, and when I go to bed, without saying anything, like the dog will be in there with me in the living room. When I go to bed, the dog follows me and then turns in right and goes into. I have a crate with a ridiculously plush mattressy thing in there for her. Oh, it's crazy. We put body pillows and everything in there, but she diverts as I go to the bedroom. She diverts into the office, goes into her bed, and will stay there until I get up in the morning. Then she comes out, joins me to go into the kitchen, get fed. It's just, and very calm. But those eyes, the minute I see them, every day, still 2 years later, every day she looks at me, my heart melts, and I'm thinking, what kind of a monster? And I write horror for a living, and I cannot imagine the type of person you must be to do something to a dog like that.
Yeah, exactly.
To do something like that to any animal who can't defend itself, it's just.
Could you possibly, like, are you? Because I know me personally, I'm so much of an animal lover. I couldn't even write something bad happening to an animal, much less a dog. Would you be able to do something like that, or no?
I'm pretty sure I could, in the context, like if it was a story that needed it for illustrative purposes. I don't know if I could go into graphic detail about it because I wouldn't want to imagine that.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is always weird, though, when someone says that, because you're like, oh, but you can go into graphic detail about somebody caving some person's head in with something.
Yeah.
It's not that, though. I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of subscribed to Jack Ketchum's theory that there should be nothing off limits for you to write about.
Mm-hmm.
But a big thing is how it's dealt with.
Exactly.
I'm more okay with the idea of an investigator opening an outhouse door and finding charred corpses of dogs in there than I am about the scene in which the guy chars the fucking dogs,
Yeah, exactly. There's
so many different ways of doing it.
I don't want to say what book it is just in case people haven't read it or even you haven't read it, but there's a dog throughout the entire book who just pops in and out, and they're constantly described as just being a beautiful dog, this and that, very loyal and whatnot. And then towards the end, there's just a very long, drawn out death scene for that dog. And just,
oh, no.
I really love the book. The book is really good, but I just had such a hard time reading that book. It's just talking about, like, as it's dying, it's just looking at the owner and everything. I'm just like, good God, this has been going on for like 5 pages. Can we just end it already?
It sounds very familiar. I will say, though, and this is always like, I find it fascinating to discuss things like this, because I've always wondered if there's a line that I won't cross.
Mm-hmm.
And I still haven't figured that out. There's certain things I don't want to write about. There are certain things that I probably wouldn't write about because I just... why, But then again, I don't know what the next story is going to be about. I don't know what it's going to require to have maximum impact. And I don't think I would shy away from something that the story needed.
Yeah, but definitely.
By that same token, then, when people say I won't read that book with that in it, that's fine. That's a personal choice. But you do know the genre we're dealing with here, right? And books like that tend to get you by taking away the things that you love. I mean, that is horror in itself, in or outside of literature.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I don't think that we as writers should shy away from putting you through that. I mean, look at Hereditary, for example, without spoiling anything. I mean, Jesus, people are getting beaten down until there's nothing but dust left,
Mm-hmm.
metaphorically, spiritually, mentally. But you can't achieve that kind of an impact without going places most people are not comfortable going.
Oh,
Or
yeah.
you end up with homogenized horror, and I will fight to death to avoid having that be the standard.
If you get to the point where you're like, no, this people, like, I can take this, but other people probably can't. It's like, well, then guess now you're watering it down to please them.
Just don't read it.
Yeah, exactly. If it's
like,
if it's gonna offend you, just don't read it. Simple as that.
This offends me. Okay, well then I will change everything about what I do and base all my decisions on what I write on the fact that you might be offended by it. I'm sorry, but that's not how it works.
Exactly.
I mean, we can't all have Gene Kuntz's Jesus dogs going through the world either.
I've only read like I think two of his books, but from what I understand, he is a huge dog lover and always has dogs in his book or something.
Yeah, and you know what? That's okay too. The guy loved dogs. He always had his dogs be, not always, some of his early stuff he didn't, and I've loved a lot of his early stuff. But I kind of went off every book having some kind of a genius superhuman magic dog in it, because I know that he had a great attachment to his dog, and he lost his dog, and it was devastating for him, and he got a new one, and that's fine. But the same thing applies. Just because I don't want to read about Jesus dogs doesn't mean that he has to stop writing about him.
Yeah, exactly.
He's a huge success. Maybe we should all be writing about magic Jesus dogs.
I mean, obviously there's a penchant for animal lovers out there, so why not?
Yeah, he even had the dog write a book.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, well, obviously not the dog, because it wasn't written by the dog. But,
Yeah.
I mean, he has a dog with the dog's name as the author because I think it's a children's dog book.
Oh, okay.
Something like that. And there's nothing at all wrong with that. I think it's a charming thing to do, but the mockery he got as a result from people who are so much better than children's dog. It's like, it changes your life in what way exactly for you not to read this or for it to be out there?
Exactly.
I honestly do believe that Shakespeare was right when he said, "Shut the fuck up."
It's an actual quote.
Yeah, I think it's from Hamlet.
And Hamlet said, "Shut the fuck up."
Yeah, alas, Yorick, would you fucking shut up?
Oh man, well, we're nearing the 2-hour mark. That flew by.
Jesus Christ, Lonesome Dove was shorter than this.
Yeah, no shit, right? Well, before I let you go, I was wondering if you would maybe want to do a quick little tiny game of Desert Island.
Oh God, yeah.
All right. Well,
it's not that I mind these. It's just that I'm not good at them. But go on anyway.
yeah, it's always fun just because, like I said, you could ask me what my favorite Dark Tower novels are. I'll tell you right now, and then 2 hours later, ask me again. It's going to be different. So that's why I like it, is because pretty much every time someone asks, you will more or less have different answers. So let's do. But I guess we'll just do three. Top three rather, or it doesn't have to be in any order, just three. So let's do Desert Island movies.
Movies. Oh my God. Movies. Ooh, Sunset Boulevard.
All right, there you go. That's a good one. Let's see. I mean, I always say I think my favorite. My top three movies, or I should say my top 5 movies, will always change, but my number 1 is always the same, and that's Pulp Fiction.
Oh, good one.
Yeah, that's it's just, I don't know, you can't beat it.
Plus, it's an anthology, so you get the feel of a bunch of different movies instead of just one.
Yeah, and it, like any Quentin Tarantino movie, it's almost 3 hours long.
Yeah, exactly.
How about Desert Island book?
Actually, funny enough, I mentioned it a minute ago. Lonesome Dove.
All right, there you go. It's a pretty thick one, isn't it?
Oh yeah. Big
Okay.
one. It's like The Stand. With
Oh
horses.
God.
Yeah.
All right, and last, let's see. I was gonna say Desert Island album. Maybe we should just, if you can think of an album, all right. But maybe just artist, if anything.
Agnes Obel.
Agnes Obel.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm like the kind of Soundgarden or Van Alice in Chains would be my go-to, but her music just haunts me.
All right.
I'm actually hoping to go see her in September in Detroit.
Oh, right on.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess that'll about do it then. I guess if do you want to plug anything, any works? I know you said you're working on one, or do you want to plug a website, your Instagram?
No.
All right. I'll link it all below. It's too much work to talk about it.
Well, I can never remember the places I am, and I figure if anybody wants to know badly enough, they'll be able to find me.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like, this is a country of what, 300 million people. How many of them have the same three names you do?
Yeah, or the level of cool.
Exactly. That's why you're here. Well, thank you so much for doing this, sir. I really, really appreciate it. And I know I've got great feedback from people telling me this is a great first interview for me to do in life and for the podcast.
Well, and if I can tell you, it didn't at all feel like it was your first interview, because I get interviewed by people who it's clear that it is because they don't know what to ask.
I was so afraid of that. I thought, afterwards you're going to hang up and be like, this fucking guy did not research anything or do anything.
You know what? The best interviews are always the ones exactly like you have done it here, where it is just basically a conversation. It's two people sitting at a table talking to each other and not stilted, and where do you get your ideas?
Yeah, see, and that's, like I said, when I wrote down my questions, I was like, I want these more as a guideline. If we come to them organically, okay. If we come to the end of something, I'll ask it and off we go again,
Yeah. Interviewers take note. This is how it's done.
Awesome. Well, I really hope to maybe have you on again in the future sometime, and we can maybe not do 2 hours. we can do 3. That'll be fine.
There you go. Yeah. We'll just make this the podcast every week. It's previously on.
Yeah, exactly. Here's the 2 hour previously on.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you so much, sir. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Absolute pleasure.
Well, you have a great rest of your day.
You too, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Yes, definitely.
All right. Bye.
See ya.